Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Asheville Vedic Astrology YouTube channel. My name is Fernando Raul Castro Alvarez, and I am part of the 4-year Asheville Vedic Astrology apprenticeship course. And today, Ryan, my teacher, has invited me here yet again to talk to you guys about how the planets function for an Aquarius rising chart. And in this specific video, we will be talking about Surya Deva, or the role of the sun for an Aquarius rising chart. And before we start, it is very important to have clear in our minds the technical aspects of what having an Aquarius ascendant means. What it means is that whenever you were born at the east in the horizon, Aquarius was rising. What it means is that whenever you were born, the plane of the observer was intercepting the plane of the ecliptic in a specific degree between 0 and 29 degrees, 59 minutes, 59 seconds of Aquarius. And that specific point in the east in the horizon represents the first cusp, it represents the ascendant, it represents the lagna, it represents the anchor, it represents the starting point from which the astrologer will build the remaining 12 houses in a horoscope that represent the 12 areas of life through which the karma of the planets and the signs will manifest itself during the lifetime of the Jataka, or the native whose horoscope the astrologer is analyzing. And for an Aquarius rising chart, the sun rules Leo, which would fall in the 7th house. Now, we must remember that the luminaries, both the sun and the moon, only rule one sign, in contrast to the other planets that rule 2 signs. Now, the sun rules Leo, and Leo is the 7th house, which in the Brihad Jataka by Varahamihira is alluded to as Patnishtana, which means the house of the partner. But before we get into the particularities of the house, we first must understand what the sun is. And the sun is called Surya Deva. It's also called Ravi. It has a lot of names. It has probably hundreds of names in Vedic lore, and probably hundreds more in other cultures throughout time in the world. But we must understand that the sun is the closest thing that we have to God. It is the closest thing to perfection that we have, because the sun never fails. The sun will always rise in the east, the sun will always set in the west, and the sun will always be more or less 1 degree per day. And that is why we measure our time. Man measures time through the sun. Some cultures do through the moon, but the moon depends on the sun also, so it's basically the same thing. That's why they all fall in the category of luminaries. So first of all, we must understand that the sun is a male planet. The sun likes to fix things, he likes to build things, he likes to improve things, he likes to create things, and at the same time, he likes to get recognized for it. He likes to get paid for doing these things, he likes to get a certificate for doing these things, he likes to, have a party thrown because he did these things, and go back home with 2 girls and have fun. He likes to get recognized, he likes to do things for others and create a better world for everyone. At the same time, the male planets do not rely so much in mood as female planets does. Male planets have the ability to do anything at any time, no matter how they feel. They might feel sad or bad, but they have the capacity to suit up and business is business and let's do it. Contrary to female planets, which depend a lot on mood to do things. If a female planet does not feel like doing something, she will not do it. So that's a very important difference to understand. At the same time, the sun is a malefic. And from the modern Vedic perspective, the sun many times is alluded as a mild malefic, which is quite interesting because in other astrologies, the sun is seen more of a neutral than anything else. But in Vedic astrology, he's seen as a malefic. And we must remember that planets close to the sun suffer. That's why we have the concept of combustion, which is, once again, a visual phenomenon, not necessarily a zodiacal longitude phenomenon. At the same time, the sun is a malefic because he represents, in essence, our essence. He represents the most crude essence of us, our seed. And that crude essence is what we follow. It's our inspiration. It's our consistency. It's our honor. And to be happy in life, we have to follow that inspiration. And by following that, we might, hurt other people. We might be cumbersome to other people. We might win over others in that idea of just following what we need to following and do what we have to do. And it's not always going to be peaches and cream. It might bring some trouble to us or trouble to other people. And this is where this idea of maleficence comes in. At the same time, the sun in the planetary cabinet analogy, which is stipulated in chapter 3 of Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, says that the sun is the king. And in essence, the sun is the godhead, is the head of government in the planetary kingdom. And in ancient times, kings were, in essence, the representatives of God on earth. That's where the idea of the divine right of the kings came from, the idea that this is the man set by God to rule, and that's why he needs to rule. But in essence, he is the kingdom. He is the figure that represents the kingdom. And as I just mentioned, he always has this obligation to be king, to be master and lord of the territories he commands over. And he has to wake up and be king. He has to go to sleep and be king, and he can never take a day off. And, this is the difficult thing of being a king. This is the maleficence of the sun. People see royalty as people who are rich and powerful. And yes, they are rich and powerful, but they have specific obligations they cannot escape from, specifically when you're young, and then when you're an old person, you're a king or a queen, you are accustomed to it. But it is the idea of doing what duty calls, doing what inspiration calls us to do. And at the same time, we must remember that the sun is a Kshatriya, which is the Varna or the caste associated to military people, to administrators. So at the same time, the sun administers the things that go on in the kingdom. And even though the sun is very powerful, very important, because he's our essence, he is our consistency, we must remember, as some astrologers today say, that the sun is a very inefficient planet. And why is this? Because even though the sun is very powerful, he works as a king, as an organizer, through decrees. And decrees are just, words. The king lifts a finger and everybody lifts a finger in the kingdom. The king moves a foot and everybody moves a foot in the kingdom. But it's just words. It's just decrees. It's just, as they call it in Catholic theology, pontification. It's just basically saying things. And if these things are not carried out, then they're highly inefficient. So it's not just following our inspiration. It's not just following what calls us to do whatever we need to do. It's not just being constant. We have to have the capacity to rule over the other planets in the planetary cabinet. We have to have the capacity of having good planets in our chart to really take that decree and put it forth in action towards Mars, to be wise with Jupiter, to be really something that satisfies us through Venus, something that really gives us intelligence towards Mercury, and so on and so forth. This is the importance of the sun, because we can follow our inspiration, we can follow that, but that does not necessarily mean that it's going to be easy. And that does not necessarily mean that it's going to happen. It has to do with a lot of things. And this is the idea where the highly inefficiency of the sun comes in. And at the same time, the sun is a sattvic planet. And Sattva Guna in the Bhagavad Gita is described as the principle of harmony, of beneficence, of holiness to a certain degree. Sattvic energy alludes to the idea of things that brings us closer to a higher spiritual realm. And we must remember that the sun is the natural Atmakarka. He's the natural Jivatma of the person. He's the natural archetype representation of the spirit of the person, right? The essence, the seed. And he is very important in designating what we are and how we feel about who we are, more than just our ego or emotional perspective of who we are. It's basically our essence. It's what makes us who we are, right? And being a sattvic planet, this is very interesting because the sun is the only Kshatriya that's a sattva guna planet in the planetary cabinet. So although he's an administrator, although he goes to war, he really does it from a genuine point of view, because being sattvic just means being, and that's it. And at the same time, the sun is Pitta. And Pitta dosha alludes to Ayurveda, which is the Vedic science of diet and health. And Pitta is basically it's not a bread, by the way. It's not Pitta bread. It's Pitta dosha. Pitta is basically a combination of water and fire. It's basically like a flame. And Pitta alludes to the power of transformation, of transmutation, of alchemical change. And this is what the sun does. The sun purifies things. The sun burns things. I mean, if you're fair-skinned, if you go out and stay a long time below the sun, you can get third-degree burns. And, the sun starts wildfires out in California. The sun can create, life, photosynthesis, that sort of thing. The sun is a very powerful planet through its fire that creates transformation, that creates transmutation, that creates life in the world. Because we must remember, the sun gives life to the plants to the animals, and the animals to us. If you're vegetarian, then you skip the animals and you go directly to the plants. So this is the idea of what the sun is. He's a very important planet, as we can see. So basically, here we have the essence of the sun. Now, what does it mean to have Leo in the seventh? Well, seventh, as I mentioned, is called Patnishtana, which is the place of the partner, and the seventh alludes to otherness. If the first house, the ascendant, is us, is you, is me, the seventh is the otherness. It's the other people. It's all types of relationships, both platonic, professional, and obviously romantic. Okay? It's also the house of travel and trade, mainly because it's the farthest away from where we are in the first, in the Lagna, in the ascendant. 180 degrees away, the farthest point away, means the farthest point that we can travel. It means the places we travel to make trade and all that. Now, the seventh is a very important house. Why? Because the seventh is an angular house. The seven is one of the Kendra houses, the seventh, the fourth, and the 10th, or the first cusp in the east and the first house, the 10th cusp or the midheaven right above our head, the west, the descendant, the seventh cusp in the west. Did I say the east? I meant the east in the ascendant, by the way, if I mentioned it incorrectly. And the fourth is the Imum Coeli, which means the deep heavens in Latin, which is basically the place below our feet, which would be the fourth cusp, the fourth house. And the seven is a very important house because the angular houses are basically like the spinal cord of any chart. Planets within these houses have a strong predisposition towards conscious action, towards manifestation, because there's a lot of power in the quadrant houses. And having the sun ruling the seven, it was also a yoga karka for an Aquarius Lagna. If we have the sun in the fifth, in the ninth, or in the first, this is a Raya Yoga. Now we have to see dignity, we have to see dashas, but in essence, it represents the capacity of the Jataka to direct conscious action towards dharmic divine fortune, which would be the combinations of angular and trikona houses that form Raya Yogas. So basically, we have this idea. Now, how can we see how the energy of the sun will manifest with the seventh house? So first of all, we must think about keywords to describe the sun. And these keywords would be, spirit. As we said, he's the natural Amakarka, authority, leadership, consistency, and light. But before we do that, we must remember the Lagna Lord for an Aquarius Lagna is Saturn. And the seventh Lord is the sun. And as you know, the sun and Saturn, even though they're child and father, in the Vedic lore, they are very bad enemies. So in essence, what we can see here from the get-go is that an Aquarius Lagna will have potentially a tendency to have some sort of, let's say, anonymity, or how do you call that in English? Some sort of, I don't want to say animosity. It's basically, let's say, there will be a lack of harmony in essence, in potential, with the type of people we encounter. Basically because of this dichotomy of the sun and Saturn. There's going to be some sort of a strong, maybe an energy that we feel like, wow, other people, there's something weird here. Maybe after the Saturn matures, after 35, maybe after the sun matures, after 21, maybe after we go through, Saturn, sun, or sun, Saturn, dashas, this might mature. But in essence, there's going to be like some sort of friction that goes on with these two houses in terms of interpersonal relationships, just as friction occurs when we have conjunctions of the sun and Saturn, sun in Saturn signs, or Saturn in Leo. Okay, so that's the first thing we have to do. At the same time, we might have, for an Aquarius Lagna, we might come across people who are very authoritative, who are very consistent in their projection. People who portray this Leo quality to them inherently with the people we make business, professional relationships, romantic relationships, platonic relationships of all kinds. An Aquarius Lagna will tend to meet people who are a very solar nature. And this, once again, can bring some sort of friction to the natural Saturn nature of the native. At the same time, there's going to be some certain authority to how an Aquarius Lagna deals with trade, deals with travel. You know, these are the type of people that when they travel, they want to, be sure where they're going. They want to be secure. They want to be really the boss when they travel because of that Leo nature in the seventh. At the same time, they want to be in command. They want to have the upper hand in trade, being the seventh part of that trade. And at the same time, even though there might be some friction with these types of relationships of 1 and 7, Sun and Saturn, you know, people are going to see other people. I mean, Aquarius Lagna people are going to see other people as light. They're going to see other people as people to follow, as people, you know, that they can learn from, even though there might be friction there. But in essence, we're going to butt some heads when it comes to this idea of the seventh as Leo for an Aquarius Lagna, because of the anonymity that goes on in this Graha Maitri, which is basically the natural scheme of planetary friendships for the Vedic astrology of Jyotisha, mainly because the Sun and Saturn are major enemies. Now, the seventh will be seen through the filter of Leo. That has to be that has to do with our legacy, that has to do with basically our individuality and how we manage those in terms of projecting our real self to others, right? So in essence, we see here that interpersonal relationships will have this friction, will have this dichotomy between the Saturn and solar natures, but at the same time, it will portray the ability of the Aquarius Lagna native to leave a legacy behind. You know, even though there might be some, let's say, some sour sweetness to relationships, we might have the capacity to work with other people, hard work, because Aquarius Lagna is a hard worker. To work out our differences and create something that might help both that person and ourselves. Now, at the same time, we must remember that the Sun gets exalted in the third house and gets debilitated in the ninth house for an Aquarius Lagna person. So what this means is that if we want this friction to go away, if we want to try to help that potential disharmony that might come up with interpersonal relationship, the best way to do it is just to take the initiative, to do things with partners, specifically if we have a romantic partner. You know, this is the best position to do hobbies together, go out, do hiking, I don't know, get in a sailing workshop, you know, do some origami, I don't know, just do anything, get to do things, have an initiative, do things together. Also, you know, our siblings can help us dealing with other people. Our siblings can be good business partners to go out, good travel partners. At the same time, we can just combine what is the idea of siblings with partnerships, doing things with siblings and partners. That might be a good idea. But at the same time, we see that the Sun gets debilitated in the ninth for an Aquarius Lagna person. So this means that, you know, there's going to be maybe in potential some issues, and this friction might have to do with these issues of the natives' personal philosophical outview in life, and how this might not correlate with the philosophical the philosophical viewpoints of the partner, or how the philosophical view view of the world of the partner might bring some trouble to the native, how the guru might not approve of the native's partnerships, how the philosophy, the religion, the upbringing of the native might bring some problems to the type of person he is attracted to. Once again, you know, giving an indication of this friction that potentially is there from the get-go. At the same time, you know, having the ninth there that represents, from the Vedic point of view, the father and the upbringing, there might be some trouble with the parents in terms of our relationships. Definitely, there might be some trouble traveling. Once again, the seventh is traveling, and also the ninth is traveling. So here we can see some sort of difficulty traveling, maybe some fear traveling, maybe some fear of not being, you know, the boss when we travel, of not having everything under control when we travel, when not feeling, you know, genuine when we travel, because there might be some trouble there. So in essence, we have to take these things into consideration. And once again, we have to see that this relationship is going to be quite tricky. And at the same time, this is very interesting, for a person who has Leo Lagna, this is also going to be difficult for them, because at the same time, they're going to have that relationships. And, you know, this is what happens with Saturn Lagnas and the Lagnas of the luminaries. These are the Lagnas that have the most problems connecting to other people, interpersonal relationships. I would say more the Leo Lagnas and the Aquarius Lagnas than the Capricorn Lagnas and the Cancer Lagnas, mainly because Leo is a place where Saturn gets debilitated. The Sun gets debilitated in Saturn Rashis, and Saturn also gets debilitated in the Moon Rashis. The Moon does not get debilitated in Saturn Rashis, but she gets a neutral dignity, and if Saturn is not helping, she will suffer. So we see here that these 4 Rashis, if we have them in the Ascendant or the Descendant, will bring some sort of difficulty in potential with interpersonal relationships. But each one will have their particularities, right? The Aquarius Lagna will have this this friction from the get-go. But the best way to figure that one out is through initiative, through courage, through things with our siblings, through hobbies, even through, you know, some sort of short travels that have to do with that. Maybe we don't like to travel long distances. Maybe we like to do short distances. So maybe the best way to travel with partners or to travel is to do it like a backpacking maybe, or doing short trips or road trips or that sort of thing. So I hope you liked my video on how Leo works for an Aquarius Lagna. If you have any questions, please feel free to write them down here in the comments. From time to time, I'll drop by and try to answer them if I can. If I can't, I'm sure Ryan will answer them, because he loves answering questions, specifically questions that have to do with planets per sign or planets per houses. He loves answering those, so keep writing them. So guys, I hope you liked it, and see you in the next video. So my name was Fernando, and God bless, and I wish you all strength, serenity, and wisdom. Take care. Stop recording now.